Victoria Cross had made impossible shots before. But three enemy generals, three headshots, 3 seconds apart, at a distance that tested the limits of human capability? Even she wondered if this time she'd finally met her match. From which city in the world are you watching this story today? If stories like this move you, consider subscribing to Hidden Heroes for more tales of extraordinary courage and the warriors who redefine what's possible. The Hindu Kush Mountains of Afghanistan stretched endlessly in all directions, their jagged peaks cutting against a slate-gray sky. At 14,000 feet above sea level, the air was thin enough to make every breath deliberate, every movement calculated. For Lieutenant Commander Victoria Cross, callsign Viper, this harsh landscape had become both sanctuary and battlefield over her 8-year career as a Navy SEAL sniper. She lay motionless on a rocky outcrop, her ghillie suit blending seamlessly with the mountain terrain. Through her Schmidt and Bender scope, she studied the compound 2.3 miles below. The distance was staggering, even by SEAL standards. Most precision shots were considered extremely long range at 800 yards. What she was contemplating was more than 5 times that distance. "Viper, this is Command," crackled the voice of Commander Jack Harrison through her earpiece. "We have visual confirmation on all 3 targets. They're positioned on the balcony, approximately 15 feet apart." Victoria adjusted her breathing, her finger tracing the familiar contours of her Macmillan TAC-50 rifle. At 32, she was the most decorated female sniper in SEAL history, with over 200 confirmed kills across 4 combat deployments. But nothing in her extensive record had prepared her for what Command was asking. "Roger, Command. I have eyes on target," she whispered into her throat mic. "But we need to discuss the feasibility of this shot." 3 miles away, in a fortified command bunker, Commander Harrison studied satellite imagery alongside Captain Rodriguez and the mission's ballistics expert, Dr. Sarah Chen. The 3 enemy generals they'd been hunting for 6 months were finally in one place, finally vulnerable. But the window of opportunity was closing fast. "Viper, we understand your concerns." Harrison's voice carried a hint of impatience. "But intel suggests they'll be moving to separate locations within the hour. This is our only chance to take them all simultaneously." Victoria's spotter, Staff Sergeant Mike Eagle Eye Thompson, lay beside her with his own high-powered scope. After 3 years working together, they communicated as much through subtle gestures as words. Mike's slight shake of the head confirmed what Victoria already knew. The shot was beyond the realm of normal possibility. "Command, let me paint you the picture," Victoria said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was being proposed. "We're talking about a 2.3-mile shot, which is already at the extreme edge of this rifle's effective range. The targets are moving independently on an elevated platform. Environmental conditions include 15-knot crosswinds, temperature differential between my position and theirs of approximately 40 degrees, and atmospheric pressure that affects bullet trajectory significantly." Dr. Chen's voice joined the conversation. "Lieutenant Commander Cross, I've run the ballistics calculations. Even with perfect conditions, the bullet drop at that distance is over 60 feet. The margin for error is essentially 0. Furthermore," Victoria continued, "Command is asking for 3 separate shots within a compressed time frame. Even if the first shot is successful, the sound delay means the targets won't react for nearly 7 seconds. But the moment that first general drops, the others will scatter." Commander Harrison's frustration was evident in his tone. "Viper, we're aware of the challenges, but you're the best precision marksman we have. If anyone can make this happen, it's you." Victoria felt the familiar weight of expectation, the burden that came with her reputation. Throughout her career, she'd consistently achieved what others deemed impossible. The longest confirmed sniper kill in SEAL history belonged to her. 1,800 yards in Iraq, 2019. But this mission was asking her to redefine the very limits of precision shooting. "Sir, with all due respect," Victoria said carefully, "this isn't just about skill. We're talking about physics. At 2.3 miles, I'm not just fighting wind and gravity. I'm fighting the curvature of the Earth." Captain Rodriguez, who'd been silent during the technical discussion, finally spoke up. "Cross, I've reviewed your record. You've never missed a critical shot, not once. Why are you hesitating now?" The question struck at the heart of Victoria's internal struggle. She'd built her career on confidence, on the absolute certainty that when she looked through that scope, her target was already dead. But doubt was a luxury snipers couldn't afford, and the creeping uncertainty was unlike anything she'd experienced. Eagle Eye caught her attention with a subtle hand signal. Through his spotting scope, he'd been tracking the three generals' movement patterns. His observations were crucial. The targets were maintaining roughly the same positions on the balcony, and their movement was predictable enough to calculate firing solutions. Command: I need 30 minutes to study the target area and run detailed calculations, Victoria said. If I'm going to attempt this, everything has to be perfect. Negative, Viper. Intel suggests we have maybe 20 minutes before they disperse. The shot sequence needs to happen now. Victoria closed her eyes briefly, calling upon every technique she'd learned about managing pressure and self-doubt. She thought about the hundreds of hours spent on ranges, the countless scenarios where split-second decisions meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Eagle Eye, talk to me about wind patterns, she whispered to Mike. Surface winds are holding steady at 15 knots from the northwest, he replied quietly. But I'm seeing different movement patterns at various elevations. The bullet's going to encounter multiple wind layers during flight time. Time of flight calculations? At this distance, you're looking at approximately 4.7 seconds from trigger pull to impact. Victoria began her pre-shot routine, the same methodical process she'd followed for 8 years. She checked her rifle's zero, confirmed the scope adjustments, and began calculating the complex ballistics required for the shot. At 2.3 miles, she wasn't just aiming at the targets, she was aiming at where the targets would be when her bullets arrived. Command, I need to know, are we certain about the target identification? Once I take this shot, there's no calling the bullets back. Positive identification confirmed, Viper. General Kandahar, General Bashir, and General Nazir. All three are high-value targets with extensive terrorist networks. Taking them out simultaneously would cripple enemy operations in the region. Victoria settled into her final firing position, her body becoming one with the rifle. She'd made her decision. The shot was theoretically possible, even if it pushed every boundary of what precision shooting could achieve. Eagle Eye, I need you to call the wind for each shot. As soon as the first bullet impacts, start your count for target movement. Roger that, Viper. I'm tracking all three targets. General Kandahar is your primary center balcony. General Bashir, left side, approximately 12 feet from primary. General Nazir, right side, 15 feet from primary. Victoria's breathing slowed to the rhythm she'd perfected over thousands of practice sessions. In through the nose, out through the mouth, finding that perfect natural respiratory pause where the human body becomes completely still. Through her scope, the three generals appeared as tiny figures, barely distinguishable at the extreme magnification required. The crosshairs wavered slightly with each heartbeat, a reminder of her humanity in a moment that demanded mechanical precision. Wind call for shot 1, Mike whispered. 15 knots northwest, hold left 3 MOA, up 7 MOA for drop. Victoria made the scope adjustments, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. The first shot had to be perfect. It would set the pattern for the following two. Command, beginning shot sequence now. Roger, Viper, all stations, weapons hold. Viper is cleared hot. Victoria's finger found the trigger, applying the steady pressure she'd practiced 10,000 times. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with familiar authority, the suppressor reducing but not eliminating the sharp crack of the .50 caliber round, leaving the barrel. 4.7 seconds stretched into eternity. Through her scope, Victoria tracked the tiny figures on the distant balcony, waiting for the impact she couldn't see directly. Impact, Eagle Eye called quietly. Target 1 is down. Targets 2 and 3 are beginning to move. Without hesitation, Victoria worked the bolt action, chambering her second round. Her calculations had accounted for the target's likely reaction patterns, and she'd already adjusted her aim point for General Bashir's projected position. Shot 2, she whispered, squeezing the trigger again. Another 4.7 seconds of suspended time. In her peripheral vision, Victoria could see Mike tracking the remaining targets through his spotting scope, his body tense with concentration. Impact. Target 2 down. Target 3 is moving toward cover. Victoria had anticipated this moment. General Nazir would be moving fastest, likely diving for the doorway leading back into the compound. She'd calculated his probable speed and trajectory, placing her crosshairs not on where he was, but where he would be. The third shot was the most difficult, a moving target at impossible range, with the added pressure of knowing that failure meant months of intelligence work would be wasted. Shot 3, Victoria breathed, and pulled the trigger for the final time. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the mountain wind seemed to pause as two snipers lay motionless on the rocky outcrop, waiting for confirmation of what would either be the most spectacular success or failure in SEAL sniper history. "All targets down," Eagle Eye confirmed, his voice betraying amazement. "Viper, you just made 3 impossible shots in sequence. All 3 generals are confirmed, KIA." Through her earpiece, Victoria could hear the stunned silence from command. Commander Harrison was the first to find his voice. "Viper, how did you—" Victoria began the process of securing her rifle, her hands remarkably steady despite the magnitude of what she'd just accomplished. "Sir, you asked if anyone could make that shot. I guess we have our answer." Dr. Chen's voice crackled through the comm system. "Lieutenant Commander Cross, you just achieved something that our ballistics model suggested was impossible. I'm going to need to completely revise our long-range shooting protocols." Captain Rodriguez, who'd questioned Victoria's hesitation earlier, spoke with newfound respect. "Cross, I owe you an apology, and the entire Special Operations community owes you a debt of gratitude." As Victoria and Eagle Eye began their extraction from the mountain position, she reflected on the moment of doubt that had preceded her historic shots. The uncertainty hadn't been weakness, it had been the healthy respect for physics and probability that kept snipers alive and missions successful. But sometimes, when the stakes were high enough and the cause was just enough, extraordinary warriors found ways to transcend the normal limits of human capability. Victoria Cross had always been exceptional, but on this day, in these mountains, she'd redefined what exceptional meant. The 3 enemy generals who'd terrorized the region for years were dead, their networks disrupted, their plans shattered. And it had all come down to 3 bullets, 4.7 seconds each, launched across 2.3 miles of hostile terrain by a woman who refused to accept the word impossible. 6 months later, Victoria Cross received the Navy Cross for her actions in Afghanistan. The citation was classified, the details known only to a select few within the Special Operations community. But among SEAL snipers, the story of the Viper's triple became legend. When asked about that day by fellow operators, Victoria's response was always the same. "Impossible is just another word for a shot no one has made yet." Sometimes the greatest victories come not from accepting limitations, but from finding ways to transcend them. Victoria Cross proved that with enough skill, preparation, and unwavering determination, even physics becomes negotiable. Have you ever been told something was impossible, only to prove the doubters wrong? Tell us in the comments below, and if stories like Victoria's remind you that the word impossible is often just a starting point for extraordinary people, subscribe to Hidden Heroes for more tales of those who redefine what's possible. Because the next time someone tells you something can't be done, remember Lieutenant Commander Victoria Cross, who looked physics in the eye and pulled the trigger anyway. This story is a work of fiction created to honor the spirit of determination, skill, and the warriors who push beyond the boundaries of what seems possible. Any resemblance to actual persons or events is purely coincidental.